In lecture 3, we're going to talk about the organization, the wiring of the autonomic nervous system. So let's first draw out the pathway. And the pathway of the autonomic nervous system is going to be two neurons in a series, okay? And what does that mean? A series means back to back. And we're going to use this word series again. So you learn it now or or learn it later. So I say the most efficient thing is learn it now. So here's our two neurons in a series, and they should be the same size, okay? Now, this first neuron, you folks, we're going to call this the preganglionic neuron, okay? And the preganglionic neuron is always going to reside, the cell body is always going to reside in the CNS. So I'm just going to color code. What color should the CNS be? I'm trying to use the same colors for you folks, so it's not all confusing, but green it is. So this here, boom, 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 boom. Yes, this is all in the central nervous system. Okay, are you folks with me? I hope so. Now, let's do another color. It's because that synapse, I'm going to make it purple. This synapse here, this is always going to be, oh, look at that circle. Okay, let's not get cocky. Okay, this is going to be in the autonomic ganglion. Here's that word again. What does ganglion mean? A collection of neuron cell bodies living outside of the CNS. Okay, so this is outside of the CNS, people. It is the nervous system, but it doesn't reside inside the central nervous system. This is where I can have now neurotransmitters be secreted from the preganglionic neuron, right? And then bind to receptors on the, what are we going to call that? Second neuron. Yup, postganglionic neuron. And that's your neurons in a series. So if there's only two neurons, that means this second neuron, the postganglionic neuron, is going to secrete its neurotransmitters, and then this is going to be the effector, right? So here's the receptor, and this is going to be my effector or target tissue, whatever you want to call it, okay? Now, remember, autonomic nervous system has two branches. Oops, sorry. Sympathetic. And then this is going to be parasympathetic. Okay? Sympathetic branch, parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. Now, there's going to be a couple. So the wiring is exactly the same, except for the following differences. So I'm going to just make a list of differences. And here are the differences. Point of origin. Lord, start all over. That's not clear. Point of origin. Okay, what does that mean? In the CNS. Okay, where does the first neuron reside in the CNS? Okay, and then location of ganglia. So where the ganglia are for the sympathetic nervous system is different from the parasympathetic nervous system. Where the sympathetic neurons come off of the CNS is different than the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, and then also we have different neurotransmitters and receptors. And I hope this doesn't surprise you, people. Okay, it's because if I want to have different cellular functions, I either have to have a different ligand and or different receptor subtypes. Okay, all right, let's expand on this. All right, so let's look at a map of the autonomic nervous system. Now, I am not into having you all memorize random crap, all right? So when I tell you folks to memorize it, it's because you folks need it. You need it. You're going to use it, all right? So we are going to learn most of the mapping in here, but not all of it, is because you're not going to need all of this. So I'm going to make a list. I'm going to draw out a list of all the organs that we're going to concentrate on a different slide. But there's a couple things I want to point out on this slide, okay? Now, the first thing is for the sympathetic nervous system, that's all here in red, right? Is that the origin, right, is thoracic and lumbar. This is where the first neuron cell body lives, okay? And then look at the ganglion. The ganglion is very close to the spine. This is the anatomical structure you folks had to learn in anatomy, right? You folks remember this? Sympathetic chain ganglion, yes? So in the sympathetic nervous system, the preganglionic neuron is very short. And then the second neuron, the postganglionic neuron, is very long as it travels all back to whatever organ that it's going to innervate, right? Now, parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. Origin of these neurons, the preganglionic neuron, is brainstem, okay, and sacrum. And look now where the ganglion is. The ganglion is either going to be near the organ or embedded in the organ itself. So the first neuron in the parasympathetic pathway is going to be very, very long. And then the second neuron is going to be very, very short. You folks have to memorize where sympathetic neurons are coming out of and where the parasympathetic neurons are coming out of, is because this is useful information. What if you or someone you care about falls down the stairs and lose some type of function? You can start communicating to that, right, to your 911 dispatch or wherever you may be, but you need to understand sympathetic neurons are coming out from thoracic and lumbar. Thoracic and lumbar is all I care, okay, that you folks memorize. You don't need to know all T1, T2, T12, L1, L2. That's unnecessary for this class, right? But thoracic and lumbar, sympathetic, brainstem, sacrum, parasympathetic. Okay, you folks got this? Okay, now I want to go through all of the different functions of the sympathetic and parasympathetic and what organs they innervate. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go through some of these organs and go over what's happening when sympathetic upregulates that organ or when the parasympathetic upregulates a certain organ. And I'm going to start off with the sympathetic nervous system. And I'm just putting this picture here as a guide so that we can start traveling down this list to keep us organized. And I understand that this picture is micro mini, but you folks have the bigger version on your other page, previous page. So this is going to be the sympathetic nervous system. And remember, what is the overall function of the sympathetic nervous system? And this is fight or flight or flee. So basically, do I want to run towards you or do I want to run away from you? Okay. And so the sympathetic nervous system can do a couple of things, right? So let's make a branch, 2 branches, boop, and one's going to be here. Okay. Now, the sympathetic nervous system can do both upregulate an effector and downregulate an effector. Okay. So let's write that down, and I want to color code. So upregulate, I'm going to make it green, for green means go, right? And I'm going to put upregulate effector. And if I'm going to upregulate an effector, I'm going to either, and what I'm doing is I'm doing a very general explanation, and then we can get into more specifics when we talk about each organ. But if the sympathetic nervous system upregulates an effector, it's usually muscle, and it's either going to constrict a muscle or Okay, this is a generic scaffolding to start off with. We can increase, that's an arrow, up arrow, increase contraction rate. Okay, all right. That's what happens when the sympathetic nervous system upregulates an effector. Green means go. Now, downregulate, because remember, in order to sustain life, we got to turn things on and we got to be able to turn things off. So we got to be able to downregulate. So I'm going to put it in red for stop. Downregulate. If I downregulate the effector, I'm either going to dilate or relax that smooth muscle, okay, leading to dilation, or, not or, and or decrease contraction rate, okay? Bam! All right, now I'm going to change my color to black. And then let's go ahead and go through some of these organs and talk about what's happening, okay? When the sympathetic nervous system is turned on. Now, let's start at the top. Look at the eye. Let's talk about the pupil, right? So here, let's set the stage first. Sympathetic nervous system is going to turn on when I'm going to fight or flee. So we are in the savannah. It is dusk. It is hunting time. We're in the grass. We see a lion. Uh-oh. I don't know if you're going to fight. I'm going to flee. So this is what's going to happen to our bodies, whether we decide to fight or run. The first thing with the pupil, right, is that, and I'm just going to start numbering these in their order, is when the sympathetic nervous system is turned on, it's going to downregulate the pupil. And what that means is it's going to cause the pupil to dilate. Yes? And why do we want to dilate the pupil? Because dilating the pupil allows more light into the eye so that we can have sharper vision. Because I hope you agree, if we're going to fight or flee, we got to be able to have or to see well, okay? Okay, that's the eye, number one. I'm not going to do the salivary glands, but I am going to move over to the heart. Where does the heart go? Do I downregulate it or do I upregulate it? This is number two, right in here. This is the heart. Okay, and so for the heart, right, I have to increase the contraction rate. Why? Why do I need to have a faster heart rate? It's because I need to now start to increase the distribution of nutrients throughout the body. Is because when I have my sympathetic nervous system turned on, I'm going to start to shunt blood to the skeletal muscle so I can run. Okay. And so the heart is going to allow me to distribute more blood. So I increase the contraction rate, therefore more oxygen, more nutrients to run skeletal muscle and to make ATP get shunted to where they're supposed to go. Okay. All right. That's the heart. Now let's talk about the lungs. And when I talk about the lungs, this is number 3, I'm going to talk about the lung airways. Okay. And so in the lung airways, there's smooth muscle there. Okay. And so if I dilate, this is going to allow me to do a process called bronchodilation. And what that allows me to do now is increase the diameter of my airways. Yes? That allows me now to have more air in the lung. And if I am running, do I need more air in the lung? Yes, I need more air because I need more oxygen. Okay, is this starting to make sense to you folks? Now, digestion. And I'm just going to say this entire liver, stomach, intestines, pancreas, I'm going to lump it all up and we're going to call this digestion. Okay, we're going to downregulate digestion. Okay, and we downregulate it is because I told you folks in a previous slide. Digestion is very, very expensive. We cannot spend energy on digestion if we're trying to fight or flight some situation, okay? So we shut it down. We don't undergo as much peristalsis and churning of the digestive system muscles, right? That is allowing us to digest food. We don't send energy to this area, okay? So I'm just going to put decrease energy in this area. Okay, shut it down. Now, I am going to talk about the bladder, right? Because this does play a role. No, I'll talk about the adrenal first. The picture was so small, I couldn't see the adrenal. All right, so this is adrenal. All right, now the adrenal is important is because during the sympathetic response, right, we're going to release stress hormones from this gland. And these stress hormones are going to now, with their hormone bind their receptor and then also do the same things that the neurotransmitters are doing, okay? And so the stress hormones are norepinephrine, epinephrine, and then cortisol. All right? Okay. Now we can do bladder, right? And I'm not going to do reproduction. We'll do reproduction when we get to repro at the end of the course. But I will talk about the bladder because there's some interesting things we can talk about here. And the bladder has a lot of different muscles. So the only muscle that I'm going to talk about for the bladder is the sphincter. And this is the sphincter that allows me now, the guardian that allows me now to have entrance of urine into its a little tunnel here. Okay, so in here, what's going to happen is this sphincter is going to contract, and then this leads to no pee or no urination. Okay, all right, that's what's going on with the sympathetic nervous system when it's upregulated. Now let's do parasympathetic. Okay, so I'm going to write a little list here, and we'll label this parasympathetic. I'll put a little box. And remember, for the parasympathetic nervous system, this is when I need to rest or digest. Okay? So of course, I'm also going to be having two different ways that I can facilitate these cellular responses. And I'm going to go back to my green pen. And yes, the parasympathetic nervous system can upregulate effectors. So if I upregulate an effector, it's going to be the same thing, people. I'm going to constrict some muscles. This is an S. Sorry. It's hard to write with this pen. Okay, grumbling is done. Sorry. Thank you for listening. Okay, constrict and or to increase contraction rate. Because I swear to God, my handwriting is nicer than this. It really is. Okay. Now, if I upregulate, I have to be able to downregulate. It is still important, okay? Downregulation, just as important as upregulate. Let's write it down again. Downregulate effector. Remember, I can dilate, which is a fancy word for relaxing smooth muscle, okay? And or I can decrease contraction rate. Are you with me? Okay, back to the black pen so I can do the functions. Okay, here we go. Now, I took away our little guide here, but that's okay because I went and numbered all of our little organs here. So let's start with number 1. Where does number 1 go? You could actually press pause and do this by yourself. That would be a great exercise. I will keep on lecturing. Press pause. I highly recommend it. Number 1, the pupil, right? Is because what am I doing? I'm resting. Okay. So if I am resting, do I need all that light in my eye? No, I do not need a lot of light coming in the eye. Okay. Because I'm resting. Now, if I'm trying to rest, what category do I place the heart? Here, heart. It's because I want to decrease my beats per minute because I don't need all that blood coursing through the body. It is a waste of energy. Remember in Unit 1, the body is very, very intelligent. It does not waste energy. It always finds the least way or the least energetic way to run the body. Okay? So heart, you don't need it. Decrease BPM. Okay? Number 3, lung airway. What am I going to do? Am I going to keep bronchodilating or the opposite? I am going to broncho constrict because I don't need large diameter of the airway right now. I am not running. I am not doing anything that is needing large volumes of oxygen or getting rid of carbon dioxide. Okay, so I return my airway back to normal. Okay, number 4, digestion. Where do I put digestion? Upregulate here, look, digest, right? So here, this is 4, digestion. And what I'm doing in digestion is I'm upregulating something called peristalsis. You folks remember this from anatomy? If not, we're going to go there when we get to digestion. But peristalsis is all the smooth muscle contraction in your entire GI tract that allows you to mechanically break down food and to propel food throughout the entire digestive tract. Okay, it is very, very expensive to run because it is a lot, meters and meters and meters of muscle. Okay, and so if I want to digest, I got to upregulate peristalsis and get the contraction rate and the constriction of these smooth muscles going. That's number 4. Number 5. Okay, this is the bladder, and again, I just want to say this is the sphincter. This will dilate, and this will cause something called fainter's pee. And depending on your life experience or your career experience, some of you folks have seen this, fainter's pee, in extreme rest, aka somebody has fainted, right? Or is unconscious. They will urinate on themselves. It's because the parasympathetic is putting them in this very strong rest state. They're unconscious. And the sphincter, and when I say sphincter, it's this sphincter right in here, will open up and all the pee now will evacuate through the urethra. Okay, and that's what I mean by fainter's pee. All right, so I want to point out something very important. Okay, so I'm going to draw this line in the sand, if you will. And I'm going to write in purple, right? Now I want to ask you folks a question. How do you facilitate all these different cellular responses? Now think about it. You already know the answer. You folks have been trained in this already, okay? It goes back to our mantra. Write it down. Ligand binds to receptor you folks know that that will lead to some type of a cellular response. Now think back to Unit 1. How do I get different cellular responses? I can either, 1, I can have different ligands, right? So different ligands binding to different receptors. Or I can have the same ligand doing what? Binding different receptor subtypes, which is different, okay? Different receptor subtypes. And this is where we're going next in lecturette 4. All right, meet back for lecturette 4. Very important lecturette.